Now this right here, this is a Apple Pencil 2 alternative, but instead of the massive price tag that Apple chucks on top of their pencil, this one is £40 or about $50. What's the catch? Is there a catch? Let's find out. So this is the Benks magnetically chargeable pencil, and it is a beauty. So let's get into the feature set. So throughout the video, I'll be comparing this to the Apple Pencil 2, as obviously that has the full set of features. So getting into feature number 1, it connects via Bluetooth in the same way that the Apple Pencil 2 does. The only difference is you'll just need to press the little button on the top there just to turn it on and off every single time. So that's 1-1 in terms of the scoring. Now point number 2 is going to be charging. Now this is actually where this pencil is really good. It actually uses the same magnets that run along the side of the actual iPad and charges wirelessly on the side exactly the same as the Apple Pencil. There is no need for any chargers, any cables to plug into this. It's just going to be there on your iPad every single time you need it. That is awesome. Much better than some of the cheaper alternatives that are available on, say, Amazon, for example. So on the scoring, that does make it 2-2, but moving on to feature set number 3, and that is the double tap zone. This is actually something I don't use. I've turned it off. I don't use it at all on my Apple Pencil 2. But this Benks does not have a double tap zone. The double tap zone on the Apple Pencil 2 allows you to change it in the settings to do different things depending on the software that you're using. So if you're in Procreate, you can switch between your colors or maybe your eraser. It's totally up to you how you want to configure it. If this is a feature that you like the look of, then maybe the Benks isn't the one for you. But again, I don't use it. I've turned it off. So looking at the scoring, that does now make it 3-2 to the Apple Pencil. So it's just pulling ahead now. Now moving on to feature set number 4, and that is tilt sensitivity. Now this actually does include tilt sensitivity, which is amazing. So what you can do with that is if you're drawing with a crayon, for example, or a pencil, when you draw with a straight line, it's going to be really thin. And if you tilt the pen on its side, when you start to shade in, you're going to get that wider edge that you would get from a real world sort of pencil or crayon, depending on what you're using. And you'll be able to nicely shade in your design. So tilt sensitivity is awesome, and that is a massive plus for the Benks. But of course, the Apple Pencil 2 does have that, so that keeps the scoring at 4-3. Now, the final category for our feature set is actually pressure sensitivity. Now, unfortunately, the Benks does not have pressure sensitivity. So when you're drawing, for example, with a script brush, if you're going to do any sort of calligraphy while you're drawing, you're not going to be able to press a little bit firmer to get a nice wider edge to your line. You're unfortunately going to have one straight line. Now, there are ways around this, and I'll get into that later on in the video, but for now, it doesn't have pressure sensitivity. So the Apple Pencil takes a 5-3 lead right at the very end. So now with that scoring, you're probably thinking that the Benks pencil is actually no good, but you couldn't be more wrong, to be honest. This pencil is awesome, like surprisingly good for the price. It's really responsive in exactly the same way. There's no delays or stutters on the screen, and the build quality is excellent. It feels exactly the same as the Apple Pencil 2. There is actually a little light on the top as well, which just gives you an idea if you're connecting via Bluetooth. If the battery's low, it's red, and if the battery's full, it's green. So that's a nice little addition on the top there. But not only is it a light, it's actually a button as well on the top, so you can actually press it once and that will take you back to your home screen, and then you can double tap it again to go to your most recent apps. Now it does sort of weigh a little bit less than the Apple Pencil 2, which normally would make it feel a little bit cheaper and not quite so premium, but this doesn't feel anywhere near cheap. It just doesn't have that weighty feel that the Apple Pencil 2 does, which kind of gives it that more premium feel while you are drawing. Now the tips on the end here are actually replaceable, and they chuck 2 extra ones in the box. The only thing I've noticed through my testing though is that they don't fit a standard Apple Pencil tip. Likewise, the pen tips too as well, if you wanted to use those on the end, they don't quite fit. This is ever so slightly smaller, so you're probably going to have to get your replacements directly from Benks if you want to replace the tip on the end. And while I was testing some of the different tips, there's also the options of how does this work with some of the grips as well. And it does actually fit all of the grips exactly the same way that the Apple Pencil 2 does. So all that extra pocket change that you will save from getting this one, you could treat yourself to a nice grip potentially, and it will fit nicely. So who is this pencil actually for? Now I think it sort of comes down to 2 different categories. I think we have to sort of break it down into note takers as well as artists. So in GoodNotes, for example, this pencil is awesome. It does everything you'd expect it to do, of course, minus the pressure sensitivity. Now, GoodNotes actually does come with a little feature in there where the faster you draw, the thicker the line may be. So if you're someone who's quite good with your handwriting, you may be able to sort of increase the speed and maybe sort of utilize that effect a little bit more to add some extra weight to your drawing. But in the actual app itself, it's fantastic. Now, I actually created this page twice in GoodNotes. The first time was with the Apple Pencil 2, and the second time was with the Benks. And truthfully, I actually prefer how the Benks looked, simply because the lack of pressure sensitivity made my wording all nice and neat. There was no sort of different weights with the handwriting, and it kept things, in my opinion, a little bit neater. So that would be my preference if I was to use this for notes. I actually prefer the Benks, but I think you could probably turn off the pressure sensitivity with the Apple Pencil 2. Now, artists, and that's obviously the premise of this YouTube channel, you will be able to create masterpieces with this pencil. The only thing you're going to have to do is slightly adjust your workflow and use the tool slightly differently in order to make it work efficiently and create and replicate potentially tutorials such as mine. But let's be honest, I don't think I'm necessarily talking right now to a owner of an Apple Pencil 2. If you're watching this and you have an Apple Pencil 2, there'd be no reason for you to swap to this alternative. You have the full set of features already. If you are someone who doesn't yet have a pencil for your iPad and you're curious about how it works with the art side of things, then I think I'm primarily talking to you as an audience member. And as I've said, you can draw with this pencil, that's for sure. The tilt sensitivity works really well in Procreate, for example, and it's really easy to use. You can see it working. There's no sort of adaptations you'll have to make to your workflow regarding tilt sensitivity. However, when it comes to something such as pressure sensitivity with, for example, the Studio Pen in Procreate, you're going to have to change your workflow there. For example, when you draw a little shape on the screen, it's going to come out as a solid line with the same weight all the way through. And if you want to change the weight of that, you'll have to just sort of draw it in again and adjust the weight of it and fill in the gaps. Another example of how the pressure sensitivity will have to be adjusted to work is in something like shading if you're going to use a soft airbrush. The soft airbrush, you can use different pressure to add more color onto the screen, and the only thing you'd have to potentially change is lower your opacity right down of the brush down to say 10% and draw it in and draw it in and layer it on top of each other until you sort of get the right effect that you want to add. It's not impossible, but it's definitely something you'll have to adjust in your workflow. Luckily, apps like Procreate already have these tools to adapt depending on how anyone wants to use the software. So it's all there available to you. You just need to work out what you would need to adjust to create the designs that you want to make. So what's my thoughts on this Benks pencil? Should you buy it? Yes, I think you should. If you're somebody who doesn't yet have an Apple Pencil 2 and you've heard all the pros and cons from this video and you are primarily a note taker, absolutely, this will be awesome for notes and the occasional drawing, a casual drawing potentially in Procreate. This will do the trick. The fact that it magnetically charges on the side of the iPad just the same as the Apple Pencil 2 is a game changer. You'll always have it with you. You won't have any inconvenience of having to plug in a cable, making sure it's charged, making sure it's with you. It will always be with you on the side of your iPad. So 100%, if you're a note taker, consider this as an alternative to the Apple Pencil 2. And if you're a serious artist, then should you get this? I don't think so. I think you should get the Apple Pencil 2 if you can afford it. This all comes down to budget really. However, if you are a serious artist or you're considering taking it a little bit more seriously in the future, then I recommend getting the Apple Pencil 2. You'll have the full set of features, no compromises. You won't have to adjust your workflow when following tutorials or courses that you may invest your time into. So I would go for the Apple Pencil 2. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.